I would like to invite here Soraya, Beheshti, and correct me if I'm wrong with your, all right. So Soraya, okay. I'm against mentioning the age, but this particular case was absolutely fascinating because Soraya is a Crimson Education in Europe and in the West and Africa region, okay? And she is managing director, okay? Now, let's talk about education. And this is that's something you need to sit here because I've got a microphone. Okay, so we were supposed to be having it in a different style, and you were supposed to be having a different moderator, but I'm happy to be here. You know why? I'm the mother of 3, okay? And this is a journey, especially when it comes to education, because when you start educating your kids, one of them is 33, one 29, and my smallest one is 15 turning 16, okay? This is my most challenging project. And I've been through all of those, sort of the hills with him. And I do remember myself switching to online education and some of the parents saying, "You crazy? You're going to lose your kid because, once he's online, he will no more be sociable, he will lose it, he will that is not an education." Prove me wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I mean, every system of schooling suits a different kind of student. There's something for everyone, but there are definitely a few misconceptions about online education. One of them being that students won't have social skills. But actually, we need to think about the world that students are going to graduate into, which is, maybe you're thinking 5-7 years. Even today, we're using a lot of our work lives are online. So these kids are already born digital native, and they're going to graduate into a world where they're actually those are going to be the important social skills, is learning how to balance your screen time and your social life, and learning how to be a good communicator through the digital world, which is very different, as you know. And then, of course, with our school, Crimson Global Academy, which is an online-first school, our students are in classes of no more than 12 to 15 people. So our philosophy at the school is that we can use really emerging and innovative technology to improve the way students learn and to personalize it. Some students are kinetic learners, some students are visual learners, and in a brick-and-mortar school, you actually just can't stream students into classes based on their learning style because you would have thousands of students. It would be too big. And so with an online model, you actually can adapt it that way. And so what we find is that students are actually spending a lot less time in school. You don't need to be at school for 7-8 hours a day. If you have 1 hour of really focused instruction for each of the classes that you're taking, you can be a lot more efficient. I think a lot of you guys can probably remember being at school and getting to your literature class and being told, okay, we're going to read for the next 40 minutes.
Right.
Why do I need to be in school for that? I would rather have a discussion. As you have in university, you have a lot more discussion-based learning and have it really focused. And so what we find is that our students, although they're in online school, they are doing school for a much shorter amount of time in the day, and then they are able to devote that extra time to significant interests outside the classroom. So they're still involved in sports. Many of them are young entrepreneurs, or they're really active in their communities, and they have more time for that. And those are connections that you build based on affinity and based on mutual interest, not because you're forced into the same classroom together.
And as I understand right now, kids are forming those relationships and connections, not necessarily face-to-face. Some of them, one of the phrases I've heard from him is my close friend lives in Cincinnati, or my close friend lives there. I'm like, what close friend you're talking about? Do I know him? He's like, no, Mom, we've been playing Fortnite. And we were in the same team, and we won, and we've been winning championships. I'm like, no, you haven't seen him. But this is the reality. This is their reality.
And that's what it'll be like when he's at work, right?
Well, exactly. And that's what, okay, I'm sort of thinking of my reality, which is also disappearing with COVID, okay? which started like, vanishing, but he will have different reality. So Crimson is like, cooking them for that, as far as I understand. Is it like, and now tell me something. Again, coming back to your age, and I apologize that I bring it, but like, it's really interesting to me because you are working with a pool of the best teachers from all over the world.
Yes.
And this is what makes you successful because,
Yes.
I mean, in real school, it would be difficult to get them all together.
Yeah.
So in online school, you can hire them and make that.
Yeah.
But how do you feel like, do you feel a challenge of hiring those teachers who probably would get those new kids? I mean, what is the process of hiring?
It's interesting because obviously it's a very different experience for the teachers because in a school, in a traditional school, a teacher is required to be in the school for 8 hours a day and they have, they're teaching a full-time schedule basically. With an online model, we can sort of have people a little bit more flexibly. So you can have a teacher who maybe just wants to teach, one subject once a week. And so that teacher can then also be involved in industry, which is actually really exciting as a school if your physics teacher is actually working in that world. It brings something new. They're not just a full-time teacher. So yeah, it's challenging from a regulation perspective. Because usually in a school, you have to hire teachers where the school is registered, and then we have classes are 24 hours, a day basically, all around the world. So that is a challenge, but I think the regulatory environment is becoming, more favorable and paying more attention to this.
And you do have graduated students by now.
Yes.
As Crimson.
Yeah. Ivy Leagues, MIT, I think, London School of Economics.
Wow. That's
Stanford.
Now the question to me, does it really important to have the certain pumping up marks in a school for the kid? Is it really the measure of the success in today's education system?
Like grades, having good grades? It's definitely important because a university like Stanford is getting 40,000 applicants all over the world. So yes, extracurriculars, differentiating yourself with your entrepreneurial skills, also really important. But the reality is Stanford are going to have kids who have excellent academics and all those other things. So it's super important. However, we don't think it's the only thing that's important. The challenge with schooling today is education is maybe, I think, the most important industry in the world because from education you get your future engineers and doctors and, government, everything. And so, and yet schooling is something we haven't really changed in about 100 years. Schooling for me was the same as for my grandparents. And this is the only industry where you can say that it hasn't really changed. And one of the problems is that the exam boards that most schools are using, well, their prerogative is to get students to pass the exam. And so you're learning, trigonometry and all these things, which I personally don't actually ever use. I wish I learned some other things, like I wish I learned about financial literacy, I wish I learned entrepreneurship, but that's not what exam boards are designed to do. So what we've tried to do in the school, because we started as a college admissions company, is prepare students for the future they're going to graduate into, 10 years from now. And so built into our school, we do teach those things. We have an investment course, we have game design, gaming, huge growing industry. We have entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. And these are all things that we think form like a whole education, a holistic education.
Anyone who's got kids here who are gamers?
Okay.
More? No? Only a few? Okay, so I was taking gaming as like waste of time, honestly. Well, okay, some of the entertainment, but waste of time when it's exceeding the timing.
Yeah.
Recently, one of my eye-opening, US is offering scholarship to the extraordinary gamers.
Yeah.
Listen to that, okay? So as I know, Crimson is also not only flexible, but looking at those things.
Yeah, I mean, how do you get teenage boys interested in maths? You teach them how to build a game.
I can tell you no.
That'll help. Yeah, if they know how those things work and they can actually, like, we have a gaming course where we teach them how to build like a replica of Angry Birds, so they can build a replica of Facebook Messenger. And this is interesting, and also, you know, when you get to apply what you're learning to something that interests you, it sticks more.
If you were to give the advice to the parents, what that would be? 1 to 3. I mean, it can be 1 or up to 3. What that would be?
Okay, so something that I've noticed, and we talk with, I mean, we deal with thousands of students. I cover Europe, Middle East, Africa, India, as you said, so lots of students all over the world, all different backgrounds. One thing I've noticed, students who are really not only successful in high school and in university, but also just, you know, sort of balanced, happy kids. Something in common is that they have like a healthy attitude towards failure. So I always talk to parents about wanting to nurture, you know, healthy ambition versus toxic ambition. You don't want to tell kids not to be ambitious too. You do. I'm so glad that I was pushed in high school by my parents, because I think it contributed to my own ambitious mentality. But healthy ambition is having a healthy attitude towards failure. If someone is too scared to fail, then they end up playing it safe and not being comfortable taking risks, which may serve them in the short term through, you know, their academics and through exams, but that child is probably going to have a hard time being entrepreneurial, because if you want to discover things, if you want to be in research, then you actually have to be okay with failing, because that's how you find success. So yeah, you want to push them. At the same time, I would also say if a child is hungry for more and they're not satisfied with whatever they're getting at school, or if they are, you know, exceptionally talented or interested in one area, push them there as well. So give them support on the weaker areas, but keep feeding them to the level that they want to, you know, reach. No point keeping them back just because they're too young. Something that I think is phenomenal about Crimson, as a company that was started by someone when he was 18, I joined when I was 19, is that we teach kids that they're not too young to do the things that they want to do. I tried to start many businesses in high school, and I always had this sense that that's something I'll do later. I was always trying to make money. That's something I'll do later, but I really, really love that our kids are really starting businesses and doing incredible things and not feeling like age is a restriction for them.
That's awesome, because we are like, you know, preaching that it's never late to change something. Okay, you're preaching it's never early to start it, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And again, you know, as a traveling mom, I'm so much appreciative to the online education system, because it gives me the flexibility to travel with him.
Yeah.
And like, you know, even to adjust the time zones, which is usually the absolutely nightmare. But this thing is like, well, I mean, I think we both share one thing: investment in education is worth doing.
Changed my life. My education, I consider the education I had, I was lucky enough to go to Columbia. I, by the way, was one of Crimson's first students, not at the school, but in our college admissions. I got a scholarship, and it's the most important thing that ever happened to me.
That's wonderful. Well, listen, Soraya, thank you for being with us, and thank you for Crimson for the partnership.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.